everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if it's your first time here, then hi, my name is Becca. Today we are doing a full brand review of Cosmetics. I'm going to share with you my hits and misses, my favorite things from the brand that I think are worth the money, and just try to give you a comprehensive look at the brand and the brand aesthetic overall. You may know that I have a playlist full of my brand reviews, so I'll link that below along with everything I'm going to talk about today, and I do also have an Cosmetics discount code. I will put it in the description box below. I have done a full face of Cosmetics before where I've reviewed a lot of products, but that was a couple of years ago and they've expanded the range quite a bit since then, so I'm going to give you a review of almost everything in the line. If you're not familiar with Cosmetics, it was founded by Michelle Phan, who of course is one of the original beauty YouTubers. A lot of their products are made in Korea. You can definitely see that aesthetic and the influence, I think, of Asian beauty. This brand is very much about pretty makeup. Soft makeup, beautiful flushes of color, lots of neutrals. You're not going to see super high coverage, experimental, bold colors. It's not really that kind of brand. It's really just about pretty skin, glowy skin, and natural flushes of earthy tones, and I think tones that are very much inspired by nature. So you'll see that throughout the selection in terms of shade ranges, but also with their shade names. Their products are generally in the mid-20s to low $40 range. So they're in that mid-tier to luxury price point. I do think the prices are very comparable to similar brands you would see in Sephora, brands like Merit, Rose Inc., Rare Beauty, the brands in that kind of mid price point of higher end beauty. I am wearing everything today as much as I could, and I do feel like the makeup look that I ended up with is very representative of an Cosmetics sort of makeup look. So I hope that's helpful. I'm going to show you application as we go along, and I'm going to start with face. For foundation, there is just one product, and that is their Cushion Foundation. This is called the Daydream Cushion Foundation. It has SPF 50 PA4 pluses. That is the Asian sunscreen rating, and I do really like this product. It's actually probably one of my favorite cushion foundations that I've tried. I wear this in the shade Sweet Secret, which is the third deepest shade. One of the shortcomings I will say of this cushion foundation is that there are only 6 shades available. It is a sheer coverage foundation. It has a very natural finish. I will say the 3 deepest shades that we see in this range are deeper than you're going to see in most cushion foundation ranges. I think that's an unfortunate byproduct of the way cushion foundations have very much been marketed to East Asians, and you see a lot of that colorism happening in, cushion technology. I can only think of one other cushion foundation brand. I think they're called Dr. Geo, and they actually are specifically focused on creating cushion foundations for deeper skin tones. So if you do have a very deep skin tone or one that is not represented in this range, I would say look there. In terms of the product itself, I do really love this. It's very comparable to the My Armani Cushion to Go foundation that's only available in Europe and Asia, which is really annoying, but since this has come into my life, I have not missed that foundation. If you're not familiar, cushion foundations are usually really nice all-in-one compacts. You get a mirror, you get your cushion puff, you open up the compact and you take off the sealed packaging, and you can just kind of dab the cushion puff onto the cushion and pat it onto your skin. You also get a refill and an extra cushion puff with each purchase. So one cushion puff is about 0.42 ounces, so less than half an ounce. So in total, you get just under an ounce of product, which is pretty standard for a foundation. The texture of this is so stunning. It applies in the most thin, skin-like manner. It's almost like the cushion is drenched with a light serum foundation, but it's not greasy. And when you use it with the cushion puff, you get the most even, thin application across the skin. It is also buildable to a surprisingly medium coverage. It's not going to ever be full coverage. I wouldn't turn to a cushion foundation for that, but it just gives me my ideal sort of everyday kind of coverage. It's not too dewy, it's not too luminous. Because it is thin, it spreads out on the skin really easily. It never gets cakey, and it sets down ever so slightly. Something really interesting about this cushion also is that it really blurs over the pores. So even though the formula itself is thin, as you're pushing it into the skin with the cushion, it has a very blurring, diffusing quality, especially across areas like the T-zone. Something I also love about this is the high sun protection. So you get UVA and UVB protection, it's broad spectrum, plus SPF 50. So if you're wearing a full face of makeup and you don't feel like maybe a full application of liquid sunscreen is realistic, which a lot of times it isn't, I'm just gonna be honest, this is a really great alternative to touching up some sun protection throughout the day. And because it is so thin and fluid and skin-like, it's not going to get cakey at all. I know a lot of people in Western beauty aren't very familiar with cushion foundation, so I do have just a couple of tips. One of the tips is that when the cushion starts to dry out, it's helpful to take some tweezers to actually literally flip this pigmented part of the cushion over. So there's usually a lot of makeup and liquid on the other side of the cushion, and then you can just tuck it back into the compact. The other thing is that cushion foundation puffs are very, very good tools. They're not just like your Western beauty sponges that you kind of toss out with the compact. They're actually really designed to apply this particular formula really well. And you'll feel as you're applying that this isn't just your regular cushion puff. It gives you a really smooth, seamless, even application across the skin. I also love this one because it's pointed, so you can get around the eyes or around the nose. It really gives you that precision application ability. And the other thing is that you do want to make sure that you are washing it much like you would a beauty sponge. So I just take some hand soap and water, I squeeze out the product, I make sure I'm doing it until the water runs clear, and then you let it dry, just because it is a tool that you're touching to your skin all the time. Cosmetics does not have a concealer in the range, but I actually find that this wears really beautifully around my eyes and around my nose. I actually didn't even add additional concealer at all around my face, not even on my like sunspots on my jawline where I usually do add some coverage. I just found that one application of this all over the face was perfect. And it is even a little bit buildable if you want to tap your finger to like spot conceal certain areas. Honestly, this is one of my top Cosmetics products. I think it's super underrated. The only critique I have of this is that I wish there were more shades because it is such a great formula. I would love to see it be more accessible to more people with lots of undertones from very light to very deep. Next, I've got the Face Cuddle Moisture Balm. This is like the only sort of skin type product in the line, and it is a solid balm in stick form. Completely unscented, and it's not a very heavy balm. It's actually very thin in texture. It almost melts to a thin, oily texture on contact. There's no added fragrance, but there are some botanicals in here that do give it like a fresh, green sort of scent. For me, this isn't a product I use that much because of my skin type. I think if you have really dry skin or even normal skin, you could use this to prep around the eyes or even all over the face. If you need a little bit of extra moisture, it does give you that like emollients and slip to the skin. For me, that's not something I look for very often because I'm combo oily, but I do think it's a nice product to have around, and it's also something that you can use on your cuticles, on your hands, on your lips as needed. It is kind of one of those like travel-friendly sort of products. I forgot to mention, powder looks really, really good on top of this cushion foundation. I really don't think you need a lot. For me, I actually just powdered in the center of my face and around my nose, a little bit on the under eyes just to keep things from moving around. But I feel like a lot of skin types may not even need powder with this formula because it is glowy, like it does give you a radiance and a luminosity, but it also has like a setting quality. So it's not going to slide around or move around. Let's move on to cheek products, starting with blushes. And the cheek product category is probably where there are the most number of Cosmetics products. They have liquid cheek products, cream cheek products, as well as powder cheek products. And they're all beautiful in their own way, though I do have certain preferences personally. I'm going to start with the Color Drops Serum Blush. This is probably one of the products that people know best from Cosmetics because they are so beautiful, they're so cute. They're just very striking, and these are a serum blush. They're very liquidy and they give you a gorgeous watercolor quality across the skin. This is the shade I use today, and it's Venetian Rose, though I will include swatches of all of the other shades and I'll cut them in here. They did recently reformulate these, and I think they're a little bit more pigmented than they were before. And you can see that they have a little dropper like this. And I do think they improved the dropper itself, although you do have to press kind of hard to make sure you're getting enough product. For me, this is a very divisive or polarizing product. I love the way it looks when it turns out well, but I do find that it can be a little finicky and you need to apply it with care. So because it is so fluid, it can potentially move around any foundation underneath. So this is not a product that I would use on a higher coverage foundation, simply because that fluidity can break up any other pigment or any other product on the skin underneath it. I also find that depending on what other makeup I'm wearing, the best application method can really vary. So for example, if I'm having a low makeup day, I think it looks really nice when it's just patted in with fingers and sort of sheared out across the skin for a gorgeous like watercolor flush on the skin. Generally, I do find application with a dense brush to be best. So I actually take a drop onto the back of my hand and then I work it into a brush and then I tap it across the cheeks, and I try not to smear, and this is usually the application method that works best if I am wearing foundation underneath. And then sometimes I find that taking a sponge and just sort of tapping out the edges can help me blend out the edges so they're a little bit more seamless. And if potentially it looks streaky at all, I find that tapping over it with a sponge does help. That said, I think it does take a lot of work, and it's a multiple step application method, right? Because you have the dropper, so you're putting the dropper onto the back of your hand. You're not going directly usually onto your cheek, and then you're picking it up and then applying it to the skin. And it does take a little bit of time to get a really even, smooth application across the skin. Once it's on, it's gorgeous, but I find that I don't reach for them very often because I know they take a little bit more work, and they don't always work with every base product that I'm using. So it's kind of a preference thing. I do think they're gorgeous, but they're probably my least used of the blushes in the line. Then I've got my favorite blush formula in the line, and that is the So Soft Cream Blushes. So these are a stick blush formula, and they are the most beautiful, diffused, cloud-like cream cheek formula. At this point, it's not necessarily a revolutionary formula, but I do find that the shade curation is really beautiful. There are some very nuanced, interesting shades, and this formula just blends out in the most gorgeous way. It gives you such a diffused but skin-like appearance on the skin, and it blends out really nicely with fingers. I actually like it best with a brush, but you can apply it in lots of different ways. You can even apply it directly onto the cheeks, and it looks really nice that way too, and you can use the warmth of your fingers to blend it in. They're also super travel friendly because they're compact, and I just can't get enough of these. They're just so easy, and every single time I use them, I know they're going to look good. They never fail. They never look patchy. They never pick up makeup underneath. They're just very reliable. They just recently did a shade extension, so I have all of the new shades plus my original favorite shade of the line. So this is the shade Chiffon. It's a light, cool-toned pink. This is the shade Demure, which is the beigey rose. This is probably my favorite shade in the line. It's called Pearl Tea. It's like a warm brownie peachy apricot. And this is the shade Strawberry, which is just such a fun pop of color on the cheek. Then we have the powder blush formula, and let me tell you, this is not like any other powder blush formula. These are called the Heaven's Glow blushes. I have 3 shades, and they are the most beautiful, silky smooth baked formula. They do have some pearl running through them, but it's not glittery at all. It just gives you the most gorgeous, radiance across the cheek. It prevents the blush from being like a flat matte, and it gives you, it's almost like a highlighter and a blush all in one. They're not powdery at all because they are baked, and so they just glide across the skin. Today I'm wearing the shade Baroque, which is a lot deeper than it looks in the pan. And that is true of all Cosmetics powders, I would say. Even the eyeshadows you'll see later look much deeper on the skin than they do in the pan, and that's definitely true of these blushes. I also am wearing the shade Rococo towards the back of my cheek, and I used Baroque towards the center of my cheek. But you can see just the light that my cheek reflects back. I mean, I am wearing highlighter up here, but all the glow that's happening like right on my actual cheek and my cheekbone and across the apple of my cheek, that's from these blushes, and you can apply them with any brush. They will look stunning. Something I love about these two is that when you really sweep it across the skin and sort of buff it in, it gives your skin the most smooth, polished marble kind of look. Your skin just looks very ethereal and smooth. I don't know how they do it. I also have the shade Faded Clementine, which again doesn't look like much in the pan, but on the skin, especially in the summer with just bronzed skin, lots of bronzer, it is absolutely gorgeous. So these are another sort of foolproof blush formula. And of the blushes, I think if you like cream, go for the soft, So Soft. But if you like powder, you really can't go wrong with any of these shades. So here are the blush swatches. I've got Faded Clementine, and then in the middle I have Baroque, and at the end I have Rococo. I know on the hand, it's really hard to convey what they actually look like on the cheeks, but they just really come to life on the cheeks with the movement of your face and the dimension, and something about applying with the brush really brings out the shine in these. Moving on to bronzer, there are again two formulas. So there's the So Soft Cream Bronzer, and then there's the Corselet Powder Bronzer. The So Soft Bronzer formula is the same formula as the blushes. It's got that same really blendable, diffused quality to it. It's so soft, like I mentioned. It has this velvety blend. I can apply this by picking it up with a brush, or I can even apply it directly to the cheeks, and that's what I did today. And then I blend out with a brush or with fingers. I have the shade Summer, and it's a really nice bronzer shade for me. It's a very neutral golden undertone bronzer. They do call this the Bronze and Sculpt. That's where I would disagree a little bit. I think it's more of a bronzer than a contour shade, simply because it has that golden undertone coming through. I do think it's a rather neutral bronzer. It's not on the orangey side. It's not too warm, but I wouldn't call it a true contour, even though it did give me some sculpting around the forehead and around the cheekbones today. I don't think it's a true contour or sculpting shade. There are 4 shades overall, so it seems to me like there's a lighter contour shade that's a little cooler, a lighter bronzer shade that's warmer, and then there's a deeper neutral shade for sculpting and a deeper warmer shade for bronzing. And I do think the range for just having 4 shades is pretty good. I just find it a little confusing. So I wish they would market maybe the contours separately from the bronzers. But again, I think it's a gorgeous formula. I would just love to see more shades of this, even though the deeper option is quite deep for a 4-range formula. There's always room for more. The Corselet bronzer is a newer release. I think they came out with these earlier this year, I want to say in 2023. And it is a really gorgeous powder bronzer formula. This is just a pressed bronzer, so it's not baked, it's not shimmery, it's just a matte bronzer, but it has the most elegant, silky, soft feel. It's very creamy, and it blends out so beautifully on the skin. I'm telling you, powder cheek products are returning. I think we just saw the Pat McGrath bronzer that's going to be coming out. Jones Road just did their bronzer formula. This is very comparable to that, where there's not a lot of kick up in the pan. It's just a very creamy, smooth bronzer that really evens out on the skin so nicely. It takes hardly any work to blend it in. I have the shade Silhouette, and I think it's the second deepest shade in this range. It's a great match for me, but again, I would love to see more shades in this range. They also do call this a sculpting bronzer, and I think similarly to their So Soft bronzer range, there are neutral shades and there are warm shades. I appreciate the difference in undertones, but again, I kind of would like to see a separate contour and a separate bronzer, and more options in each range. And maybe that's something, M Cosmetics will do. I know they've added shades before, so we'll see. But I will say, for a new release and one that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, I think this is really underrated. I would love to see a bronzer range in their baked formula, something like this, but with bronzy tones. I think would be so gorgeous. I'm imagining something similar to like the Hourglass bronzers, where there's that bit of radiance diffused through the formula. That would just be gorgeous. So that's on my M Cosmetics wish list. Next up, we've got highlighters, and there are two formulas. There's a cushion highlighter, so a liquid highlighter, as well as a powder highlighter. I have to say the cushion highlighter is one product that I don't love in this range. And it's simply because it's not really my style. So it's the classic cushion style. Again, you've got the cushion puff with the cushion in here. You don't get a refill for this one. I have the shade Aura, which is the second shade in I think 4 shades. And this one is very beaming. Like, I don't know if you can see, I'm sure you can, the glow on my cheek today. I have not worn highlighter like this in years. She is beaming, okay? Let me swatch this for you. It's a stunning formula. It's just a little bit more metallic than I would typically go for. So I think you can see it right there. It's a really gorgeous neutral champagne, really matches my skin tone nicely. It does have a slightly icier reflect running through it. And it's not glittery, but it is like a blingy highlighter. It's more metallic. The other thing is that I just don't love the applicator. So the applicator is round, and that makes sense when you're applying something across a large surface area. But I find that it's a little bit too big for highlighter, and so I apply more product than I need to, and I find that I over apply product, and that's actually what happened today. I applied a ton of product. I said, oh my God, oops. And then I had to grab my sponge and sort of blot it out and make sure that that formula was diffused. The other thing is that I do find this cushion formula to be kind of fast drying. So as I over applied and I went to go grab the sponge and then I buffed it out, it had already sort of dried on my cheek, so that it made distributing the product evenly a little bit more difficult than I would have liked. I think I would have liked a slightly more fluid, or even not emollient, but just a formula that didn't set as quickly, so you have more time to work with it. But I can't deny that the final effect is really beautiful. It's a stunning beaming highlighter. And because it is liquid, there's a way that it almost looks liquid on the cheek. Like, it just gives you a really glassy, smooth application once you figure out the application. So I think I like the juice. I just don't love the application method. And it is a little bit blingier than I typically go for. And that's just a matter of taste. The other thing is that because it is such a beaming highlighter, it has the potential to emphasize any texture or bumps. I mean, I have a couple of clogged pores on my cheek right here, and I do feel like in person I notice them. Again, not anything super major, that's just a byproduct of having a very, very blingy highlighter. And then there is the Sunscape highlighter, which is their baked highlighter, and I have the shade Clarity, which is a really gorgeous golden champagne. So there's the liquid highlighter, and here is the powder. And again, it's got that really beautiful, smooth baked formula. And I find this to be a little bit more forgiving than the cushion highlighters, simply because it's not quite as metallic. You're able to control the level of highlight a little bit better. And much like the blushes, the more you buff it into the skin, the more it becomes sort of polished and smooth, and it gives you that really polished marble appearance across the skin. This is the lightest of 4 shades. So there are 3 shades that are deeper than this, and they're gorgeous. There are some peachier shades, some more copper shades that would look gorgeous on deeper skin tones. So I think the highlighter range is really stunning in this formula. So that is it for cheeks. I think a total of 7 cheek formulas, and let's move on to eyes. So for eyeshadow, there are 2 formulas. There are eyeshadow singles as well as eyeshadow palettes. So the singles are called the Cosmic Pearl Dewy Eyeshadows, and they are really, really gorgeous. They come packaged like this. They're sort of like their own little work of art, and it's like a putty cream hybrid eyeshadow formula. You can see how wet looking and gorgeous and pigmented that is. There's a swatch of the shade Wish. It's such a stunning formula. This shade is the most beautiful champagne, and it really does look wet across the skin. And it also has kind of like this rosy undertone, so it does offer a bit of warmth on my skin tone especially. So I have rather mixed feelings about this eyeshadow formula because I think it looks so stunning when you apply it, and it applies especially well with fingers because that warmth of your finger really warms up the product and sort of melts it across the eye. However, it is so emollient and there are so many binders in this formula to give it that wet feeling that I do find it creases on me pretty heavily. And I have tried it with many different eye primers, and it's not so bad in the winter, but in the summer, if I'm sweating at all, or if I'm just a bit like dewier than I might be than usual, I do find it does crease a lot throughout the day. It's not a huge con for me. It's something I can pat out really easily, but it's also not a perfect formula for my eye type. If you don't struggle with that, it might not be an issue for you, but that's just something that I want to note because I feel like that's a common thing I hear is people love the way it looks, but they do find it creases a lot. Then we've got the Divine Skies eyeshadow palette. This comes in 5 different colorways and I have 3 of them here. Here's what the packaging looks like. I love how compact these are. They come in this like gorgeous compact, and they all have 6 shades with a blend of mattes, satins, and metallics. So this is the Magic Hour palette. Those are the swatches of Magic Hour. This is the Rodin palette, and this is part of their Masterpiece collection, which I think was limited edition, but is not anymore. I think it's part of the permanent line. So here is the Rodin palette, which is probably my favorite of the 3. I feel like there are the most visible differences between the metallics. There are some with shimmers, one that's almost like a pinky duochrome, and of course the really smooth mattes. And I feel like you have everything you need here for a complete eye look. And the last palette is the Da Vinci palette, and I do have to say these are very hard to get open. Sometimes I need to like take tweezers and pry it open because it's tightly sealed. But here's the Da Vinci palette. You can see it's almost like a deeper version of a neutral palette. So here is the Da Vinci palette. You can see there are some rosier tones and it's overall a little bit warmer than the Rodin palette. But there's, again, a really gorgeous difference between the metallics and this like satin rosy shade, and lots of beautiful mattes here too. So today I'm wearing a mix of the Da Vinci and Rodin palettes. I wanted to show you just some variation, but you can see side by side these palettes are very beautiful. They work well together. This is a little bit more neutral, whereas this is a little bit deeper and warmer. But again, such gorgeous everyday palettes. It's really all I need in a neutral palette, and they're definitely going to be my like go-to travel palettes. These are newer to me, and I do think I'm going to get more use out of these 2 than I will out of the Magic Hour palette. I do love the Magic Hour palette, but it's just a little bit rosier and pinker, and it's a more particular color story than your everyday neutrals, you know? But again, this is gorgeous too. I will say that these mattes are really interesting because they look deeper on the skin once you apply them, and they're very hard pressed. They're not baked, but they don't have a lot of kick up when you apply them, which I appreciate. And they're not like super intense or thick or like dense mattes. They're more of a sheer, not sheer, but like a thin formula across the eye rather than your like Natasha Denona kind of mattes. They're not powdery. They're just a really interesting, like dense formula. And the metallics themselves are super creamy. They're buttery. The satin shades are really sophisticated. I do feel like the metallic formulas and the satin formulas really improved in this collection because you see a greater variation in terms of texture. For mascara, there is just one formula, and that is the Pick Me Up Volume and Length Mascara. This is a tubing mascara, and what that means is that it's smudge proof, but once it gets wet and you remove it with water, it will come off in little clumps. I really love tubing formulas. This is a formula I have very mixed feelings about because it is very wet. So it's the kind of formula that starts out, you can even see the product there, that starts out very wet. This is a fresh tube that I just recently opened. And because it's so wet, I find that it does not hold a curl very well. It does dry out the longer you have it open, so it gets better the longer you have it open, but at the beginning, it is really wet. And even if I use it with my like curling lash primers, it's so wet that I do find my curl drops. I think I got a better application with this eye than this eye, but even still, they're pretty straight. And I think it's more lengthening than volumizing personally. Because it's wet, I don't find it that volumizing in terms of being that super buildable. But the formula is very black. It gives you a lot of definition in the lash line, and the length is buildable. I will say that. And as it dries out, it becomes even more buildable. So it's a mascara that's not entirely a home run, but I think if you like tubing mascaras, it is worth a try, especially if you don't struggle with holding a curl the way that I do. Then we've got the eyeliners, and there are a couple of formats. So there's the brush tip liquid eyeliners, the felt tip liquid eyeliners, and there's also a gel eyeliner that I haven't tried. Personally, I love a brush tip eyeliner. That's just my preference. And these give you a lot of precision. So it's a very, very sharp point, a very fine point. I used the black just across my lash line today. And I think these are made in Korea as well. They remind me a lot of Korean eyeliners where you get that really fine line. And I love that she makes it in brown as well. It's just a little bit softer for every day and it gives you a lot of control. So again, you can see how fine this eyeliner is. They don't bleed, they don't smudge throughout the day. It's just a total home run formula. For brows, you guys know I'm really, really picky with brows, and these two products are new to me. There's a brow pencil and a brow cream, and they've really surprised me. So this is the Micro Fluff Sculpting Brow Cream, and I did not think I would like this. You guys know I need a lot of hold through my brows. I usually go for a clear brow gel for a slightly more laminated look, but I have been feeling myself moving more towards a natural brow shape, and this shocked me. It has a really, really fine spoolie. It's tiny, and this brow cream actually gives me a lot of hold and texture and definition. I was able to really take my time to work it through each brow hair because the brush is tiny. It catches every single brow hair, and even though it's not giving me like flat against my skin hold, it's actually giving me like a lot of vertical hold, especially through the middle of my brow where my brow hair naturally starts to move downwards. It's actually holding up the arch really, really well. I would have been perfectly happy just leaving my brow with just the brow cream as it is. It does give you that sculpting ability. So it really surprised me, I have to say. This is the shade Soft Ebony. I might go a shade lighter just for a softer look overall. But again, a home run for me. Then they've got their retractable brow pencil, their fine liner brow pencil, and I got the shade Deep Taupe, and I think I'll get Deep Taupe in the brow cream as well. It's just a nice ashy brown. This brow pencil, I had a little bit of an injury with mine. When I opened mine, the pencil actually came detached, but I was able to just put it back in and it seems to be working just fine. So it's a classic retractable pencil. The only unique thing, I don't know if you can see because it's so fine, is that it's got a micro point, but it's sort of like a rectangle or like an oval. And I like it because when you turn it on its side, you're able to get a really slim hair-like stroke rather than something that's going to like get flatter and rounder over time. Like a regular rounded tip pencil, you would have to sharpen it. This doesn't have a sharpener, and this doesn't really need a sharpener because you're using it on its edge, but it's also still really, really fine. Again, not too pigmented, easy to work with, gives you a really natural brow look. And I think these both come in 5 shades ranging from light and blonde to deeper with variations in between. I know Cosmetics does have a clear brow gel. I haven't tried that, so if I do, I'll report back at some point in the future. So moving on to lips, there are quite a few lip formulas and there are quite a few newer lip formulas, and that's what I'm going to focus on. I want to start with the soft Blur Velvet lip liners because I think these are so good. They're a retractable lip liner, and you guys know I typically like my wooden lip liners, but the shades and the shade curation of these are so nice. There's really a nude lip color for every skin tone. So I have 3 here. I've swatched them for you. This is Mink, Teddy, and Kitten. So you can see they're nude shades, but with very different undertones, something more neutral, something warmer, something pink, and there are quite a few other shades as well. And this is so creamy. It goes on so nicely. It doesn't pull at the lips at all. I will say because it is so creamy, it's not quite as long lasting as like a drier formula, but I also don't mind reapplying it, and it's also easy to fill in the whole lip if you like that kind of lip liner application. The newest formulas to me are the Everglass Lip Dews, and these are lip glosses. I have to be honest with you, when I first saw these, I did not know if I would like them. The packaging is really beautiful, you cannot deny. I love that you can see the product in here. When I opened it, I thought it was so goopy and sticky, and I wasn't sure if it was going to feel that way on the lips, but it is absolutely stunning. I have 2 shades. The shade Enchant is what I'm wearing today. I'll actually touch that up. Despite looking a little bit thicker when you first open up the package, it actually really smooths over the lip lines. It doesn't feel sticky at all on the lips. It almost feels like it coats and smooths over the lip lines, and there are a lot of gorgeous like nude shades with lots of variation. The other shade that I have is Dream. This is a bit of a peachier shade. So here is Enchant, what I'm wearing now, and here is Dream. I'm wearing Enchant over the Mink liner. But you can see they're very shiny. They give this like lacquered look across the lips, but they're not uncomfortable. They're not sticky in any way, and they do feel really hydrating. I just had to move you a little bit because the sun is coming in now. It's golden hour, but it's a little bit tricky with the camera, so I'm gonna try to stay focused. Probably my favorite lip formula from Cosmetics are the lip cushions. So these are really gorgeous tinted lip balms. They're melty, they're sheer, but pigmented, and the shade range is just so good. They've expanded these a lot, and the shade range is just so good. So I think I actually have most of the shades. I'm going to swatch them for you. So these have that click up mechanism. You don't want to click up too much. You only need to click up once or twice, and they are super moisturizing over time. So let me swatch the ones that I have. So here are the shades going from side to side starting here. I've got Mona Lisa, then I've got Magic Hour, this is Van Gogh, this is Angel, that beautiful red, this is Venetian Rose, and finally Faded Clementine. But look how gorgeous and juicy and moisturizing these look. The way these look on the hand is exactly how they feel on the lips. I love that these don't just like evaporate over time. You can actually feel them moisturizing the lips. They do feel like a lip treatment. But I just also love the shade curation. I mean, there are so many gorgeous undertones, and I love that they do have pops of color as well as lots of interesting neutrals. And then finally, the last lip formula I have are these soft-spoken velvet lip creams. So these are like a soft, blurred, diffused matte lipstick. And they are liquid, but they look very diffused. They give you that blurred lip look when it's actually applied. There are 6 shades. I know I have all 6, but I can only find 5, so I am going to swatch these for you. The packaging is really nice on these. They're very, very weighty, and they feel very luxurious. So here's what they look like. You can see they're really that like whipped, fluffy texture. And when you blur these out on the lips, they do look really beautiful. So starting on this side, I've got Whisper, Intuition, Petal, Tender, and then Manifest. These are very similar in texture to a lot of K-beauty like matte stains, which makes sense because these are made in Korea. They're also similar to the MAC lip, what are those called? The Velvet Blur liquid lipsticks. They're that kind of formula. I do think these are really elegant. They don't bunch up on the lips the way some of these kinds of formulas can because they are silicone heavy. These do give you a really even application across the lips. My only critique of these is that I wish there were a bit more variation among the shades. For example, I find these middle 3 shades can often look quite similar on the lips, whereas the 2 outer shades look the most different. But I think it would have been nice to see more like brown toned nudes or maybe even cooler tones, because overall they do run very warm and like burnt terracotta orangey. Unfortunately, I can't compare these to the original Infinite Lip Clouds because I haven't tried that formula. That's her older, the original matte lipstick formula. But I think personally, I would probably prefer these anyway, simply because they're a very modern matte. They just give you that modern blurred lip appearance, and I think they're kind of like the updated version of what I imagine the Infinite Lip Clouds are like. Even though I've heard really good things about those and I've heard that they're not drying, I just think this is the kind of lip look that feels a little bit more modern. I also haven't tried the original lip gloss formula, but I think these, again, also feel really modern and fresh and give you that really smooth, lacquered lip look while being a very sophisticated, not thick, but moisturizing, like serum-y formula. The last thing I forgot to mention is that there is an untinted or clear version of the lip cushion. So it's everything I love about the lip cushion formula. It's moisturizing, it's hydrating, but it's clear and it comes in like the cutest little package. So this is nice for prepping the lips before makeup, but it's also really nice on its own. So I think that's everything. I've covered all of the bases. I know this is a long video, but I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I also forgot to mention this at the beginning of the video, but this video is not sponsored. It's not affiliated with Cosmetics. I do have affiliate codes that I shared with you, but my brand reviews themselves are never sponsored, just so that I can stay as editorially independent and transparent and honest and upfront as I can be about the pros and cons of all of the products. So I would also love to know what brand reviews you'd like to see from me next. These do take some time to put together, so I always like to hear from you what you want to know about. If you found this helpful, it would really mean a lot to me if you would subscribe, like, comment, all of the things, and come find me on my other socials. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!